Okay, I'm going to do a quick kind of explanation on some really helpful tips for doing a wacky rig. I usually do a wacky rig using what's called a mosquito hook, and you'll see these in a package that's usually marked for wacky rigging. And in comparison, this is a 3/0, what they call an extra wide gap hook. It's because of how big the gap it is from the needle point to the shank. And so there's that huge gap there. That's kind of the basics. But and then you have other varieties as well. You have you can use a standard Aberdeen hook, and this one has weedless capabilities because of these little wires. The fish bite through the wires and they get hooked. But that'll usually keep the weeds if you have it set up correctly above the actual barb. The weeds will just slide right over. That was the Aberdeen weedless hook. And then another hook that I like to use if I'm just Texas rigging or wacky rigging is the long shank hook. And as you can see, it has a skinnier gap. So, but it still has this bent like crook in its neck right here. And what that crook does is it allows you to basically pierce and hold the head of the creature, like if it's a salamander or a worm in your Texas rigging. But that shoulder and the hook shank is right there holding the head of it. And then of course this is an extra wide gap again. Once the fish bites, it just penetrates right through the body. So this is a Texas rigged chicken, I think it's a lemon pepper chicken salamander, which is pretty popular when the water is really clear. I really like these Yum dingers, super cheap. I think they're 4.5 inches long. Sometimes they're 5. Really good value. They're like commonly in an 8 or 9 pack for like $2 to $3. And it can even tell you right here to use a 3.0 or 4.0 extra wide gap hook. But sometimes those hooks are even called offsets. But offsets and extra wide gaps are the same thing. Again, I like to use these standard, I would say these are just like normal shanked. But when you're wacky rigging, you'll definitely want to use these mosquito hooks. I'll show you why. I'm going to try to open this bag. Gosh, I should have used like a bag that I already had open, but oh well. This has been a successful one for me. This is the green pumpkin chartreuse. So it has like a nice little chartreuse tail, and you can see that little action right there, and I'm barely holding it. And you see how wobbly it is? Imagine how it acts underwater. It's got a little hook pocket right here, which is awesome. So you want to leave this tail as the tail and use this portion of it as the head. So I use this thing, it's called a wacky rig tool. I insert the head about halfway, as you can see, and then on the very other side of it are these little rubber gaskets, like little rubber things. I just put one on. Here's what I like to do. I usually will just go right in the middle of the worm, and for the most part, that is how I wacky rig. That pretty much keeps them out of the weeds and everything. The hookup chances are pretty low with these, because these just float down to the if you can simulate how they float down to the bottom like that, and then you whip up, they'll just float back down again. It really should reduce like your rate of hookup. Like if you get snagged or in any sort of like vegetation or sticks, I try to fish these around, on the tops of I would say well established levels of moss, because it'll just sit there and lay down on the moss if I know it's a very mossy layer at the bottom. I don't like to fish these around sticks or fallen trees. If I do so, I'll do very carefully, and I'll end up using one of these standard Aberdeen hooks with the weedless, the weed guard. So use these around trees, fallen timber, sticks, heavy vegetation. Use these in open water, maybe with a little bit of a moss layer and some underwater vegetation. But yeah, that'll do it.